let's talk about the government's argument, because it is basically that the president is the only one who should make decisions about national security, and that this ruling is preventing him from doing that. That's basically what they're saying, isn't it?
It is basically what they're saying. They are arguing for almost unfettered discretion in the hands of the president, which he can exercise almost unilaterally, which he has done here. And there's no question that there's a certain force to this argument, and that even within the sort of boundaries of each of the three branches of government, that the executive branch was given authority over this type of a matter, and for good reason. However, what we're faced with here is, can any sort of order, no matter what, under any circumstances, be legal, even if it seems to run up against other provisions of the Constitution? So this is novel, and neither side is really addressing the problems with their own arguments. I mean, so the president himself is certainly not conceding that he should have any sort of limitations on what he does, and the opponents are only conceding in passing that this is something that the president was elected to do, was to enforce security. Now, what we do see, which is very interesting here, is that all the senior level officials in the national security realm from the past administration have filed a brief with the court saying, we don't see that there's any sense to what has been done here. And so now there's a further question as to whether there are certain minimal processes that need to be followed here. What kind of consultation within the executive branch needs to take place? Can the president just on his own with Steve Bannon conjure something up and put it in writing and say, this represents the considered judgment of the United States government? That's also one of the issues at play here.
Right, and the religious aspect is key here, isn't it, Eric? Because those opposed to the ban say it violates the First Amendment of the US Constitution about the freedom of religion. Trump, though, says that it is not about religion at all. It is targeting governments that don't work with the White House on vetting potential migrants.
Yes, that's exactly where the boundary lines have been drawn, because no matter what the president does, no matter what his authority might otherwise be, he cannot violate the First Amendment. In other words, he cannot be seen to be establishing one religion as a governmentally favored religion or discriminating against another. And his big problem is that throughout the campaign and even after he was elected, he talked about, quote unquote, a Muslim ban. And that would seem to be something that clearly was unconstitutional. Some of his unofficial spokespeople, like Rudy Giuliani in New York, after this was first announced, he also spoke about trying to make a quote-unquote Muslim ban illegal. So this is something we've never seen before, and it's going to be very, very interesting. Where do the lines get drawn in terms of this protected sphere under the First Amendment, which absolutely creates an area where the government cannot intervene, and then on the other hand, this area where the government does normally have what we call plenary power, the power to defend our borders. When we have a conflict between these two, where do we draw the lines? Clearly, this is something that was left up to the courts to decide, but it's a very tricky situation and one that they're normally not set up to intervene
in. And as a lawyer yourself, Eric, I'm wondering, aside from the legality or not of this ban, what do you make of the president's attacks on individual judges and on the judiciary system as a whole?
Well, that's a horrifying situation, and I think it's indefensible, and nobody has defended it. Nobody in a responsible position has defended it. It's not surprising. We've talked about it here on your network before. He did it even during the campaign when a judge was ruling against him and his business individually in a lawsuit regarding the so-called Trump University. He attacked the ethnicity of the judge. At that time, the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, said it was out-and-out racism to do that, to attack a judge in that way. We've not heard anything from Paul Ryan now, although some other members of the Republican Party have said, this has got to stop. It's a fundamental principle of the Republic that the judges decide what is and is not constitutional. Now, he can disagree with their opinion, but he can't disagree with that procedure.
Eric, it's always good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Eric Lusandler in Washington and not in New York, as I was wrongly informed. Well, another first in Washington today.